Hey there, YouTube land. Big Dave here. So I guess viewer question. I got some questions about tonguing. Now, I think if you go on, if you look around YouTube, there are some lessons by some really good clarinet players about different processes of tonguing, and then there's George Garzone, who has a whole thing about not using the tongue and learning to play without the tongue for phrases and all that. And then there's so much stuff out there you can check out. I mean, the thing that you want to be able to do, first of all, is to start your note just clearly. And the attack is going to depend on exactly where the tongue is placed on the reed. So if you're more towards the tip, there's a little more click to it. If you're back further on the tongue, maybe it's a more softer tongue, or what some people call more of a legato kind of tongue. So if I play more on the tip, like I'll just use a B. That's not real. I mean, this is a tenor, so it's not going to be right on the tip. It's going to be back maybe a half an inch or so. If I want more of a legato tongue, I'm using more of the roll part of the tongue, and I'm just almost barely touching it. But if I want more attack, I'm a little bit closer to the tip and more precisely actually touching and taking my finger, taking my tongue on and off. The thing is, what I know is a problem sometimes is that there's not enough air support behind the tone to release, like a good sound right away. So if you have good air support and you immediately have that air behind the pressure, that air pressure behind the tongue as it's released, you're going to get that full sound, even if it's for a fraction, of a second. Just sometimes you want that. You still want to have that full air there. If it's longer, well, it's longer. But even if it's just a touch. I mean, I learned that back in the 70s. I was studying it with one teacher that was around my area here, a guy named Muzzy. His real name is John Napadano. Man, the guy was an incredible player, too. Had a huge sound. And he was so funny. He's passed away now. But I remember I went for this lesson with him, and I was in this little booth and in this music store. And he said, you got to play you got to have the air. No matter, even if the note is like this big, you have to have this much air. It doesn't matter if the note is, this long or just minuscule. You got to have the same volume of the air. And I started to get that, when I was practicing. I started to understand that better. And I do remember at the time I was playing in a local college, a big band. We had a good big band where there was a lot of good players in it. And this is probably 1978. And there was some really good players in there. Everybody, everybody had something to offer. And it was a fun band. And the leader, Condi Atkinson, was a great bass player. I mean, he was a terrific teacher and all that. And he's passed away too. But anyway, I remember we had a concert right about the time I started studying with Muzzy. and I was going to the concert, and I had a couple solos to play on the tenor. And I remember I stood up to play the solo. I was playing a Rubber Berg Larsen, kind of like this one, you know. This is a, I don't know, 105/2. I don't know what I was playing at the time. Might have been a 95/1 because I used that for a while. I was using a Rubber Berg Larsen and a metal one, but the rubber one played better in tune. Anyway, I remember playing, you know, standing up there playing my solo, one of the solos in front of the big band, and I just had all this sound coming out, and I was saying, wow, this is great. And my lines were more connected together. And the thing I contributed that to completely was, you know, was doing Muzzy's lesson and working on his concept. We worked on, Naima was a tune that we were working on, and we had a duet we were playing, and Cannonball Adderley tune. I mean, I still have the same books that he wrote in. I still have those books. I saved them. I never got rid of them or anything like that. I remember he made me stand against the wall and, you know, and play against the wall. Sorry, this reed is dry, you know. And he also made me practice fourths. So that was another key. But when you tongue, you know, you, even if the note is that little teeny tiny note, you want to have that shot that's there. So that your attacca, you know, is the attack is there. But sometimes you don't want that hard tongue. You have to play, you know, with a lighter tongue, especially in certain kinds of, you know, classical music. That's more, you know, of a ba. And the other thing is, like, I don't try not to get involved in other people's things that they post or whatever, you know, but I mean, I think the lesson that George Garzone posts about no tongue, not using the tongue is very valuable, because you're learning to play your phrases without having the tongue involved. You're working on your rhythm, you're working on your air support and connecting. Now there, if you're going to repeat notes, well, you have to use the tongue. I mean, you could ha them out, but it's a little bit not efficient. So what I mean is, like, if you practice playing through lines, and aside from occasionally starting a note with, you know, the tongue. I'm not using the tongue really at all for any of that. You know, I'm starting those low notes just with the air. Even the low B flat. All I'm doing is breathing into that. I'm not involving the tongue there, you know. So, I mean, you have to consider all that stuff, you know, when you work on your tonguing. When you use the tongue, you have the tongue involved in the mask, in the embouchure, in the throat, in the, you know, the tongue is involved. If you're using it, it's now involved. If you're not using it and it's just in a position to practice your airflow, So you have this, if you're not using the tongue and it's not, being brought into the equation, then you could just focus on the air and the embouchure and the mask and, what you're doing with your lip and all that other stuff. Okay, so that's really it. I mean, I don't know what else to say about this. There are, like I said, if you watch some of the flute lessons that are online from, some of the, the better flute players, like, what's his name, Shockey? I think he's a phenomenal flute player, and there's other ones too. Watch the Berlin Philharmonic Symphony Winds, all that stuff. They have the Symphony Winds players that all have their own stuff going on with the tonguing. I mean, you can learn from all those that are available on YouTube. So, all right. Anyway, so that's the gig for now, and I hope you get something out of this. The question is somewhat answered. I don't know. All right. Have a good day.